If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, I shall rank the main 17 bloodlines in Vampire the Masquerade in what I consider to be the best and worst across all editions. This list will not contain the Danava. In the previous episode of this podcast, I presented the 13 clans in Vampire the Masquerade from worst to best in what I consider to be the definitive list. Everyone else's is wrong, for I am superior in every sense of the word. Hashtag sorry not sorry. But as promised to the listeners in that episode, I said I would tackle the rarer bloodlines in a similar fashion, which I intend to do right now. For this list, I shall be referring to the list of bloodlines in the back of V20, which is where I pulled the magic number 17 from. Of course, I'll be assessing their worth from material written about them in other books, in addition to vanilla V20. I will not discuss the Lianan or the weird and wacky offshoots of said bloodlines, such as the Talvaliac Tremere, or however they're pronounced, or the Angelist Aether, just the main bloodlines. And I wish to reiterate that all thoughts and opinions are my own, so if you disagree with something I've said, that is totally fine. It does not mean, however, that you are right and I'm wrong and vice versa.
Number 17, Clan True Brouha.
It probably won't surprise anyone knowing that the Brouha are my least favourite clan and bloodline, and that is a shame that the True Brouha are at this low. On paper, they are such an interesting idea, an offshoot of the main clan who do not share Troil's fiery anger but Brouha's stoicism. It's interesting to think about, which presents some unique takes on the rebels. Making them rulers of the Termahera is perhaps the most interesting thing about them, but then it gets just a little bit silly, as they become devoid of any real emotion and actually lose it more and more as time goes on. There is of course their ability to slow down time with reverse celerity, temporis. Again, this sounds very interesting on paper, but its powers present far more problems than they create on a paradoxical level, as many of the powers in the discipline are remarkably broken. To that end, you could argue that they are meant solely as storyteller characters, but even as moody antagonists, they are just a bit too powerful and out there for Vampire the Masquerade, in my personal opinion. They exist solely for Vampire the Masquerade players to try out Mage the Ascension. I rate this bloodline, time and relative dimension in space, out of 10. Number 16. Clan Nagaraja. I have a few acquaintances who will be annoyed with me for how low this bloodline is, but I just do not think they are very interesting. Their inception and involvement for creating the Termahera is fascinating for sure, but everything else about them that makes them stand out, their need to devour flesh instead of blood, and their unusual necromancy, all just quirky selling points that only serve to make the roleplay and experience far more difficult for the player. I am ignoring V5, as now they are just, boring. Do I blame the writers for this? In a sense, yes, but only because the little the V5 writers had to work with really underlines how underwhelming the Nagaraja are. I rate this bloodline, feed me, Seymour! Out of 10. Number 15. Clan Blood Brothers. I have very little positive things to say with regards to the Blood Brothers, other than they are a constant reminder as to why the Tremere and Sabbat are fucked up things that exist within the world of darkness. Whilst they can serve as an interesting antagonist in an anarcho-camarilla game, I find it really difficult to think of anyone who wants to play them, unless a group of players decide one day they all really wanted to play the Blood Brothers, which is even more unlikely. And given how exactly they are actually created, I would personally feel a little uncomfortable playing out the torture of children. I rate this bloodline, tell me it's not true, out of 10. Number 14. Clan Noriad. I am not surprised if you've not heard of them or just forget about these weird gangrel offshoots. They are incredibly forgetful, for they only exist in 2 places, 2 pages at the back of V20 and a panel in Dark Ages Europe. No, that's it. That's really it. Whilst the latter sells the idea of how creepy and alien they should be, V20 makes the Noriad sound odd, yes, but not very engaging to either storyteller or player. Perhaps they are the only bloodline that is truly an ST concept. They can only be really used in one particular setting, which is Dark Ages games set in Scandinavia. I almost feel sorry for how much of a wasted concept they are. I rate this bloodline, we're from Sweden, out of 10. Number 13, Clan Daughters of Cacophony. I personally failed to see the popularity with the Daughters of Cacophony beyond being a predominantly female bloodline, which is by no means a bad thing. This might seem a weird thing for someone as creative as I to say. I will admit that their unique discipline, Melpomene, is a very fascinating one, as is their strange curse, but they may just as well be a sinning Malkavian or a mad Toreador. The vagueness of their origins are all very interesting, but there are so many variants out there that it is far more confusing than it is engaging, for me personally. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not dislike the Sirens. I merely believe there are far more engaging bloodlines than this one, which is the main reason as to why they are as low as they are here. I rate this bloodline, sing, 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 sing. Everybody start to sing like dee 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 ba 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 da. Now you're singing with a swing, out of 10. Number 12, Clan Ander. I really like the Ander, as you probably gathered from my lore episode about them and the other Gangrel offshoots some time ago. A far more focused Gangrel archetype with a greater sense of honour and relationship with their disciplines than the main clan is something I can get behind. My reasoning for putting them as low as this is for a reason they share with some of the other bloodlines on this list, and indeed some of the clans from the previous episode. I think they are especially difficult to get into because of their association with the Khans. Whilst the sourcebook Winds from the East details most of their involvement with the grander metaplot, some players may be put off by the additional research required to play their character, on top of the awkward tasking of managing a unique road for them also. I rate this bloodline, ta-ta, out of 10. Number 11, Glanzamidi. The Samadi were an odd one to place on the list because of a few factors. Their physical features are just a blend of the Nosferatu and Cappadosian features with added stink, which is now mostly irrelevant in V5. They also have a lot of cultural elements that may seem intimidating for players and storytellers to emulate in their games. Of course, you can play a clan however you please, but it is the initial description of the clan stereotype that could be somewhat daunting. I place them above the Ander because they are more applicable to modern night settings and are a pinch easier to get into for that alone, especially in the V5 setting, thanks to the beautiful write-up in Cult of the Blood Gods. I rate this bloodline Buenos Dias, out of 10. Number 10. Clan Children of Osiris. Never in all my life would I expect to find the Children of Osiris in a top 10 of any bloodline list, and here I am slapping them here because all the others are just a milk-warm in comparison, in my totally biased opinion. The seemingly peaceful enemies of the Setites make for an interesting concept as vampires, but their portrayal as being the vampire good guy seems a little bit odd for most Vampire the Masquerade settings. Whilst I admit their existence is a very interesting take on the relationship between humanity and beast, they are, once again, only relevant in a handful of specific settings that require a delicate spiritual finesse to pull off effectively, something I feel most storytellers and players do not have the patience for. No offense. I rate this bloodline walk like an Egyptian again, out of 10. Number 9. Clan Barley. I have a strange love-hate relationship with the vampiric infernalists, which is very similar to my love-hate relationship with the Tzimisce, terrifying boogeymen of the vampire world who wield frightening otherworldly powers. They are socialist vampires that convert the masses to join their faith, much like a more sinister Setite might. The various incarnations of them from edition to edition adds constant fucked up levels of how one may portray the Barley, who range from being the bringers of the end times to guardians, stopping the demons entering our world. These cool elements are what makes the Barley interesting to me. What stops them from going any higher on this list is how it is usually the worst of the fan base that ruins the fun for everyone. I will say that I have seen some people do really awesome and tasteful depictions of them, which is really a weird sentence to form for sure. Such players, however, are very much in the minority. I rate this bloodline Devilgate Drive, out of 10. Number 8. Clan Araman. It was very tempting to put the Aramans much lower on this list, for the modern knight variant is almost engaging. A gangrel who denounces their clan, has a weird magical experience, and becomes a separate clan altogether. The spiritual undertones in this origin story have my interest, but it didn't sit nicely with me, as it just seemed a bit too convenient and a lazy way to introduce a new discipline and a bloodline as a whole. This version of the Aramans being all female just felt like a tick-boxing exercise, but that could just be my reading of the write-up in the V20 book. It is the original incarnation of the Aramans, or should I say, the newer one that serves as the original variant found in the V20 Dark Ages book that makes them far more badass and respectable as a bloodline. A proper story of how Spiritus came into being, why the Aramans are all female, and even their name are explained in such a beautifully crafted way that really makes you fear them. I rate this bloodline Steffi Devan out of 10. Number 7. Clan Lamia. On the topic of badass female vampires, one has to praise the Lamia, warrior necromancers that revere Lilith. What more isn't there to love? Oh, I'm sorry, that is all that you're going to get from me regarding the Lamia. I rate this bloodline Xena, warrior princess, out of 10. Number 6. Clan Harbingers of Skulls. When I first got my hands on V20 and first learned the Harbingers of Skulls, I viewed them as evil aristocratic zombies, something I remarked upon in my V20 review. The 2 pages in that book does not do them any justice, for most know them as the bloodline of another clan that has now since become a bloodline of its own right. Studying them for the purposes of this podcast made me appreciate them a bit more, whilst it was the writing and lore of the Bloodlines that really made me think twice about their culture and how massively they differ from the Cappadosians they once were a part of, which still remains very strong despite their becoming as one with the Cappadosians in V5. I rate this bloodline the Gentleman Gamer out of 10. Number 5. Clan Glacec. I have always feared the Glacec simply because they are a bloodline of the La Sombra, a seemingly perfect clan, a clan who do not even call themselves a clan because it implies an equal footing, and yet one La Sombra mage thought the clan wasn't good enough, decided to dick about in the abyss with some fey blood, and pops out with what would become the modern incarnation of the Glacec. The insistence by many to brand the Weirdlings vampire librarians really missed the disturbing qualities and obsessive desire to control the abyss. As for the Magar before them, they may be fey-touched mortals turned vampires, but they lack the horror that more familiar Glacec have. Whilst arguably a means to get Vampire the Masquerade players to try changing the dreaming, the Glacec stand up alone in their own right here. I rate this bloodline Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy out of 10. Number 4. Clan Cappadosian. Come on. Of course I have to love the Cappadosians more than their angry offshoot. Once one of the more powerful clans in the canon, they ruled not as princes, but the clever voices of wisdom. They are the original vampiric necromancers and the ones ruling the Hakata clan sect Finny. I could waffle for nights on about my love for them and their lore, but I've done this in great detail in many episodes already. They are a bloodline that has grown on me in great amounts. I rate this bloodline #dicks out for Cappadocius out of 10. Number 3. Clan Salubri. Once a proud and strong clan that saved the world from the wicked Barley, destined to fall at the hands of the wicked Tremere, and now becoming an unfair confused meme in 5th edition, I adore practically everything about the Salubri. Despite having 3 separate casts with their own slight take on Valorant and Obia, none of them are difficult for the player to get into, even with their original tough clan weakness. I believe they are an excellent choice of clan for players who wish to have a fair challenge upholding the Masquerade. I do mean pre-5 Salubri, however, cause fuck that noise. I rate this bloodline #Salot didn't do anything wrong out of 10.
Number 2. Clan Gargoyle.
Fun fact, the narrator for the Lore by Night podcast was very nearly a gargoyle in a suit because I thought that would have been a funny idea. It should be obvious for any long-time listener of the podcast that I have a big soft spot for all the gargoyle types, which are fun to explore as a player and ST characters as you uncover their dark and horrific creation process, which I shouldn't love as much as I do, especially when you consider what I said regarding the Blood Brothers earlier this episode. There is a lot of variety to be had with the gargoyles. They can either be horrible animals, curious beasts, or like any other more ordinary kindred. Also, they can fly, which is always a bonus. It is not often I will say, I hope they bring Clan X into V5, but I really hope the writers do bring official rules for gargoyle creation for players and storytellers to use somewhere somehow. Hey writers, hey World of Darkness team in Sweden land. If you're listening to this, if you want somebody to write gargoyle shit for you, hook me up. I rate this bloodline, I'm rock hard, out of 10. Number 1. Clan Lianan. I stated before in a previous episode that the Lianan became my favourite bloodline upon reading their write-up in the V20 Dark Ages book, overtaking the Gargoyles by a considerable amount. I don't want to laugh at them now, as I did with the V20 description. Being a spiritual person myself, I find them motives very interesting and their ties to the Crone and /or Lilith very frightening, turning faiths once peaceful into something far more horrific, as one would expect of those with the Curse of Cain. Whilst I shan't deny they are by far one of the more difficult bloodlines on this list to roleplay, in the modern knights at least, those that want to play a vampire wanting to get back into nature should give this clan a go. Bonus points if you insist on doing this on the Dark Ages, because that will grant you bonus Law by Night points. I rate this bloodline 17 out of 10. And there you have it, the 17 main bloodlines in Vampire the Masquerade ranked from worst to best according to me, the Law by Night podcast guy, who's the only opinion that matters on this episode. Now, do I intend on doing a list for the Liaborn? Yeah, probably. Only for completionist's sake, mind you. No, I don't expect that one to get many listeners because fuck all people seem to like them. Do I care? Do I? Fuck! To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you will be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.